Now, FBI Director James Comey was up on Capitol Hill meeting with key members of the House and Senate committees today. They spent about an hour with each committee member, I should say with the House and with the Senate, to talk about all of these wiretapping allegations, as well as any developments with this ongoing investigation into Russian contacts with Trump advisors.
All right, Margaret, so what more can you tell us about that briefing on Capitol Hill by FBI Director James Comey, and what is the White House saying about it?
Well, the FBI director has not spoken publicly. He met behind closed doors, so we don't know the details of what he revealed in that meeting. But our own Jeff Pegues has reported, since he covers that department, that ever since Saturday, and that flurry of tweets from the president, James Comey was upset because that allegation of wiretapping suggests either illegal activity on the part of the FBI or is speaking about an ongoing, pretty sensitive investigation. So it put him in an awkward spot. According to CBS reporting, up to this point, he had asked the Justice Department to publicly refute these claims, that the Justice Department has not done so. So that is why the White House is saying from the podium, you can ask the FBI director, but we can't answer the question of whether or not there's any investigation underway.
All right, Margaret, it's getting a lot of play across the board. You asked Press Secretary Spicer about those wiretapping allegations during Thursday's briefing. Tell us a little more about that exchange and what you made of it.
Well, yesterday, when we left the White House press briefing with Sean Spicer, he had answered in a lengthy exchange with me, something he then came back to clarify at the end, saying, as it relates to the Department of Justice, we have no reason to believe that there is a counterintelligence investigation or any investigation involving the president. His language was specific, it was scripted, it was handed to him at the conclusion of the briefing by another aide after he had initially said to me, we want to look into whether there's an investigation. So in his initial answer, he raised the prospect that there was one, and then in his final answer, he said there was no reason to believe there was one. After other reporters went to the Justice Department to say, because it would be unusual, did the Justice Department tell the White House, in fact, that's the case, that there's no investigation? The White House, when pressed on that today, which I brought up to Sean Spicer, said, no, actually, we gave that answer without knowing anything from the Department of Justice. So the definitive tone and phrasing used yesterday, turns out, was not based on any fact or information from the agencies doing the investigation itself. So it was basically acknowledged it was spin, and they don't know the answer of whether the president's under investigation or not.
Wow, which begs the question, where is the president on all of this?
Well, we haven't heard from the president. He hasn't spoken to reporters. He's only spoken in meetings with some prepared remarks over the course of the week. It's unusual because Donald Trump is so camera friendly. He has enjoyed having cameras in so many of his meetings over this first month in office to show what he's doing, who he's meeting with, all the leadership. He really wants to show how hands-on he is. So for the president to then pull back from that, have many of these meetings be closed press, not respond to reporters' questions, is very different behavior for him. And it's notable because we have also not heard the president follow up on those tweets, those allegations and accusations that he made on Saturday. Most of his direct communication over Twitter has been about the economy, been about health care, all the things on his agenda that you would think the press would be reporting on right now, but they are instead continuing to chase the thing that the president said he was personally so upset about on Saturday. So in some ways, the president has disrupted his own communications agenda with those tweets he sent out. He doesn't want us talking about this. He wants us talking about health care and other work. But he raised this incredible charge, which we're continuing to try to substantiate because, as the White House says, take the president at his word. So that's what we're trying to do.
All right, Margaret, we're also getting word that Attorney General Jeff Sessions is looking to appoint a special counsel to investigate Obama-era scandals. What is that about?
Well, Well, it's interesting because the Attorney General just recused himself last week from any probe related to the campaign and Trump associates and contacts with Russia. And of course, Jeff Sessions did that because as a senator, he was part of that campaign. And so since he's removed himself from that investigation, he has also in the past been very resistant to the idea of appointing a special prosecutor or counsel to independently look into these issues related to Russian contacts with the campaign or Trump associates. So it's unusual for him to then embrace the idea of a special prosecutor or counsel today when it comes to Obama-era scandals. Now, what we know, there are a number of things that Republicans have long called for a special prosecutor to look into, whether it was scandals related to the IRS and documents disappearing or being lost, whether it comes to the so-called Fast and Furious scandal in regard to gun running cross-border with Mexico, whether it comes to Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General, and her contact with Bill Clinton during the campaign when, of course, his wife was running for president, Hillary Clinton, and there was investigation related to her email use while Secretary of State and using a private server. So during the Obama administration, there were calls from Republicans for a special prosecutor. Now that you have Jeff Sessions, a Republican, in that job, he's saying, I want to look into that. But when it comes to some of these other issues with a special prosecutor on the Russia contact in the Trump White House, they've been resistant up to this point.
All right, let's go ahead and get to some new reaction now from Vice President Mike Pence about former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn working as a, quote, a foreign agent on behalf of the government of Turkey before taking on his role at the White House. Here's what he had to say in an interview with Fox News late Thursday.
Hearing that story today was the first I heard of it. And I fully support the decision that President Trump made to ask for General Flynn's resignation.
All right, so Margaret, this is a much different response than what we've heard from Secretary Spicer. What's going on?
It's a very different response. Sean Spicer from the podium at the White House said, we weren't aware that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had worked as a lobbyist on behalf or in some capacity related to the government of Turkey. We know that he did because after the fact, just yesterday, he filed legal papers declaring himself as acting as a foreign agent for a government, that is Turkey. So that declaration and legal filing had not been made until he left the Trump administration. And Sean Spicer defended it and drew a line there saying, look, this work was not done while he was on the transition team or when he was in office. But the Trump campaign and then the Trump administration has drawn a line saying they want to drain the swamp. They don't want lobbyists in the government. They certainly don't want ones who have worked for foreign governments to do so. And yet the direct national security advisor to the President of the United States just admitted yesterday that he was acting as one. So what's unusual for Sean Spicer to say we were not aware is there was a lot of reporting done at the time during the campaign and afterwards about Michael Flynn's work that he had done on behalf of the Turkish government. So that term foreign agent sounds like it's something a little bit more mysterious. It's lobbying work that Michael Flynn said he carried out, and it matters because the Trump administration says they don't want lobbyists in the government and because it wasn't declared before he was in the White House.
All right, Margaret Brennan. Thank you, Margaret.